so I want to share with you guys a movie which came out 5 years ago. The movie is called Joy. Has anyone seen it before? Joy. It's got the lady, Katniss, Jennifer Lawrence. I just think of her as Katniss. Jennifer Lawrence plays a girl also called Joy. But Joy's life is anything but joyful at times. She has this heart of an inventor. She wants to accomplish great things, but she is in a broken family. You know, she's always serving her parents. Her ex-husband's living downstairs. She just got conflict everywhere. And she has a really boring job. Now, eventually, she invents this incredible mop. Have you ever seen those mops that they squeeze up all the water and then you squeeze it into a bucket? Yeah, she invents that device there, and she tries to sell it to Kmart to, make a name for herself, make some money, but overall she loves inventing things. But in the process, she has all these obstacles in her life. She loses money, she's rejected, she's embarrassed. Things just do not go her way. And the irony of the movie is that her name is Joy, yet bad things just keep happening to her. Now, in the end, she ends up winning the lawsuits. She gets the money back. The product's a success. She becomes this really famous inventor. And it works out. And whilst money and fame aren't what makes someone worthy, you really see in Joy this deep sense of strength, this sense of victory that comes through the hard circumstances, that comes through her character. Despite her name being Joy, it feels like it doesn't make sense with her circumstances. But that's the beauty of the story. Now, tonight's message is on that word, joy, that 3-letter word. Now, joy is something more than an emotion. It's the thankful response to relationship with God. It's delighting in God. And it's a rare gift that we as Christians get to experience as it comes from Him. And this is something I'm really passionate about. I'm always trying to understand, how can I enjoy God? How can I know Him on a deeper level? And there's always that part of me, when I'm reading my Bible or praying or singing, sometimes, and quite often, sometimes I don't feel anything. Sometimes words go in one ear and out the other ear. Has that ever happened to you guys? Sometimes you're just listening to something, but it just sort of goes out your ear. It doesn't come all the way down to your heart. And I know I ought to feel something, but I have to keep coming back to God, and I have to keep coming back to His love, because He wants to be enjoyed. And I believe when we enjoy God, everything falls into its place in life, doesn't it? When we enjoy God, we're going to treasure Him, we're going to obey Him, we're going to center our life around Him. The decisions of where we live, what we do, we'll be thinking of Him at the center if we really enjoy and love Him. So the message for my talk tonight is that your purpose, MBM Youth, your purpose in life is to enjoy God forever. Your purpose in life is to enjoy God forever. Now, joy is one of the fruit of the Spirit, as Arne mentioned earlier, and every week this term we're going to work through a different fruit of the Spirit. Now, in the book of Galatians, chapter 5, verse 22, we're told that the fruit of the Spirit, and it's up on the screen, is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Now, you'll notice it says, I said fruit, not fruits, because we get all of them. They all come as a package. You don't just get to have one and miss out on some, or you get a few. You get all of them. Once Jesus comes into your life and you come to Him, He gives you His Spirit, and His Spirit, over time, produces each one of those in you. You may not be perfect in one area. Heck, none of us are perfect in any area. But over time, He starts to work in you. He gives you new desires. He gives you the ability to look like Him. He gives you the character of Jesus. And if you haven't accepted Jesus yet, I'm really thankful you're here, because I want you to hear about this kind of joy. I want you to hear about a joy that is so different to what the world is offering us. Because the world shows us that you can experience joy in only what's created here on earth. Whether it's a food, at the beach, playing sport, Xbox, or winning an award. And these are great things, but it misses the fact that God created them. And at the end of the day, They're just temporary experiences. You can enjoy something now. You can enjoy a day at the beach, but you may not be able to enjoy it tomorrow. It's more like a roller coaster of emotions, highs and lows. You go up and down constantly. But we're told, you should just be positive in life. You should be happy. You should just be kind all the time. But try telling that to someone who's depressed, right? Try telling that to someone who's lost a loved one, or someone who's sick, or someone who's hurting. It doesn't really sound that nice, does it? Imagine just telling someone who's sad, just be happy. Have you ever said that to someone who's really sad? It would be so stupid. Just try and achieve something with your life. That'll make you feel good. And that would be extremely hurtful to hear as well. But with joy, and especially the joy that we hear about in the Bible, it's possible, despite experiencing all those things, to still be thankful and to delight in God. For example, I can be depressed or stressed in life, but I can still enjoy God because I know He's with me. Or I can be lonely, but I can take comfort knowing He's with me always to the very end. That's the kind of joy that our world doesn't offer. Now, what our culture offers might sound good on the surface, but dig a little bit deeper, and then you realize it's pretty fragile. It doesn't produce a deep, lasting joy. It doesn't compare with Jesus. I'm going to tell you a story about something that was fake in my life. One time, my mum and I were in a city in Spain called Valencia. Now, Valencia is really famous for its oranges. You might have seen it in Coles or Woolies, Valencian oranges. They come from Valencia. Now, my mum and I were in this park, and everywhere in the park, you had trees. And on the trees, they were full of oranges. You would actually see more orange than you would see green. And that was pretty amazing. And we're walking through this park, and my mum stops and starts just grabbing oranges from the tree and puts it in her bag to take with us so we can have some snacks. And then I'm walking away. I'm thinking, Mum, what are you doing? That's stealing. I'm walking away, and then I just hear this gagging sound. Whoa! And then I turn around, and I see my mum spat the orange out on the ground. And it turned out that the oranges actually tasted like lemons. She put almost a whole lemon in her mouth and had to spit it out. Yeah, you see, the oranges, they were just there for show. You weren't meant to eat them. They just looked good on the surface, and no one ate them. They were just there to make the city look nice. Now, later at that time when we were in Spain, we actually had some orange juice, and that was real. It was a real orange from a real orange tree, put through a juicer. It was beautiful, especially on a hot day in Spain. That was a real orange, okay? And that's a little bit of an example of something that tasted amazing, something that was satisfying compared to something that was fake and tasted disgusting. And that's a little bit about what the world's offer of joy is to us. It looks good on the surface, but deeply, it's unsatisfying. It's temporary. It's fake. But Jesus' promise of joy is so worth it. He promises us a supernatural joy, which we're going to hear about soon, a supernatural joy that goes beyond our circumstances in life when we're in a low spell of life. So MBM Youth, I want to encourage you guys tonight. I want to encourage you to move to from not caring or ignoring joy, from thinking of joy as something that's optional, to pursuing the joy and delight that comes in the satisfying love of God. Let's walk in the same path God is calling us to walk. And tonight, as we focus on joy, let's be people who find that our greatest joy comes in God alone, because our purpose is to enjoy God forever. So we're going to look at John chapter 15, verse 9 to 11. It's on the paper in front of you. And we really see in John chapter 15 that Jesus offers us his joy so that our joy would be perfect. I'm just going to read it out for us. Jesus said this the day before he died when he's with his disciples, his best friends. So we're going to read in John chapter 15, verse 9. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. If you keep my commands, you will remain in my love. And just as I have kept my Father's commands and remain in his love, I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be complete. I want us to really narrow in on two things that Jesus said, but especially in verse 11, we see two things. We see one, Jesus promises, my joy would be in you. Jesus' joy is in us. And number two, we see that in giving us his joy, our joy would be made complete. So point number one, our joy is in, Jesus' joy is in us, sorry. Verse 11, Jesus says, "I've said these things to you so that my joy may be in you." So Jesus wants to give you his delight, his happiness. Now it's worth just slowing down to think, what is Jesus' joy? What is he finding joy in? What made him truly happy? Well, it definitely wasn't the number of followers he had. He had 72 followers at one point. Some of you guys have more followers on Instagram, but Jesus had really tightly following followers. It wasn't the clothes on his back. It wasn't the food he ate. It wasn't the places he went to visit. The heart of his joy was the relationship with his dad, with God. He experienced a level of closeness with God no one had ever experienced. We see that in verse 9. Reread that one. It says, "As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you." Wow. Just think about that. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Soak that in. With the same measure his dad had loved him, Jesus is saying, "I've loved you. I've loved you just as my dad loved me." Now that is a very powerful statement. I want you to think about that person in your life who probably gives you the most satisfaction, who fills you up with such a deep sense of happiness. It might be your bestie who's right next to you. It might be someone at school. It might be your boyfriend or your girlfriend, someone in the room, or someone at school. It might be a parent, someone you really and deeply trust. Now, I haven't had children myself, but I think there's only one person who does have children. But when I've spoken to friends who are parents, they always speak about how there's something about when they hold their baby for the first time, when they look down at them, that they experience a whole new level of joy that they never had before, a whole new level of love. They look down at this little baby, dependent. This baby needs them to survive. This baby hasn't done anything to earn their love, but they just belong to them. They're part of them. You can't even explain it. It's just so powerful. Now, my mum raised me since I was since I was born, really, right? Didn't think about that one. But my parents got divorced when I was 2. But my mum especially raised me by myself. So my mum pretty much had the hard job of raising a really naughty monkey in me, because I was actually one of the worst kids growing up. My aunts told my mum that I was so bad that she should get me tested by some sort of psychologist because I was really naughty. I would kick and scream in the shops. I would throw tantrums. I would insist on going the Thomas the Tank Engine toy, the one you put $1 in, again and again and again. And if I didn't get my way, I would be really mad. I would run out of toy shops and steal all the toys with me because that's how it worked. That's how I thought it worked at the time. Anyway, I caused my mum a lot of trouble. If I didn't get my way, I would yell. I once even bit the arm of my cousin because she had a toy that I wanted. I felt really right, though, at the time. I know. One time it was a Saturday as well, and I kicked my dad's car because he didn't give me a toy. This is not... You guys don't know me. Seriously, that is a different me. Okay? And that is the kind of person my mum had to raise up. Now, do you think my mum loved me because of anything good I did? No, it definitely was not that one. My mum loved me in spite of all the horrible things I did, because at the end of the day, I was still her son. I still belonged to her. Now, Jesus and his dad had a very different relationship. Jesus wasn't created, he always existed, but his relationship with his dad was there from the beginning. But unlike me, Jesus was the perfect son. He always obeyed his father. He never disobeyed his dad. There was so much love in this relationship, and it filled Jesus with pure joy. Now, the very next day after that passage, after what Jesus said to his disciples, we know that he actually was arrested, he was crucified, he went to the cross. He was betrayed by his best friends, he was deserted by all his friends, no one was at his right hand. He was deserted. He was beaten, he was laid to hang on a cross until he suffocated and there was no more breath in him. Jesus did all that for you. But you know the crazy thing? The thing that was enabling him to continue to do that? It was that 3-letter word we talked about. Joy. It was joy. We're going to have a look at Hebrews chapter 12, verse 2, and I think this is an amazing part of the Bible. Verse 2 tells us a little bit about what Jesus did. We're told in verse 2, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross and despised its shame, and was seated at the right hand of God. Notice that key word again, joy. What was pushing Jesus on as he went to the cross? It was joy. Jesus experienced joy as he endured the cross. Isn't that a crazy concept? Who experiences joy as they're about to be killed? Being hung and crucified on a cross was the most humiliating thing anyone could endure. But even more humiliating for someone who was the Son of God, who was perfect, who didn't deserve it. Jesus did that for you, and it was joy motivating him. It wasn't anger or bitterness or frustration towards God or to you. It was joy that came from his close relationship with his dad. Now, I wonder if you've ever endured something and been forced to enjoy it. Like you've ever been had to sit down for dinner and your parents make something for you which you really don't want to eat, but you're really thankful they made it for you, but you don't really like it, and they say, you will eat this and you will enjoy it. Have you ever been told to enjoy something? Now, Jesus, that doesn't even compare, but Jesus endured the cross for you. And what's crazy is he did that with joy. Oh my goodness, who does that? He looked forward to being raised with his dad, and he looked forward to saving you. He experienced this. He gave us his joy, so his joy would be in us, because our purpose is to enjoy God forever. And we see in doing that, by giving us his joy, Jesus completes our joy. We see in verse 11 that in giving us his joy, Jesus says, your joy may be full. The very same thankfulness and relationship Jesus experiences with his dad is the same he gives to us to make us full. Now, I wonder if you've ever filled up the petrol tank in your car, if you've ever seen your parents do it. Now, if you've ever filled up a tank of petrol, you'll see that eventually it comes to the point where it just like click, 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 click. It won't let anything more go into the car because it's at its full point. But if you're a little bit like me, whenever I'm driving and it comes to the empty mark, a little orange light comes on, and I always try and push through because I know I can go a little bit further. But eventually it comes to the point where I have to stop and I have to get down and fill it up with petrol. And I really need to. But here's what I do. I'm a little bit stingy sometimes. I just fill it up just a little bit, like $5 amount, just so the orange light goes away. But then here's what happens. The next day, I have to fill it up again. So that's the problem. But do you see what Jesus promises to do instead? He says that by giving us his joy, he would make our joy full. He makes our joy full. And that is incredible. He promises that when we cling to him, we will experience the same enjoyment that he has in his relationship with his dad. We'll be content, delighted, satisfied in him, that we will never feel empty. I'm going to read verse 11 out again because I think it's such a powerful statement. He says, my joy may be in you and your joy may be complete. I wonder if you feel the weight of that promise. Your joy will be full. I wonder what would be that thing in life that would make you really happy. What do you feel like you would need right now or sometime this year to make you truly content in your life? Something you don't have right now. I wonder, MBM Youth, what are you hoping for in 2020 that will make you the happiest person, that will make your dreams come true? Is it a relationship finally with that guy or girl you have a crush on? That person who feels like, oh man, they're going to complete my existence in life. Is it that dream home you wish you could buy one day or live in? Or is it when you finish high school at the end of the year, getting the offer to that university you want to get into? Now, I realized at the end of year 12 just how fragile what I was holding on to complete me. I realized by the end of year 12 that I would only feel happy if, one, I was in a relationship with the girl from my youth group, and two, if I got accepted to study physiotherapy at the University of Sydney, the greatest university in the world. Well, apparently it is the best uni to study physiotherapy. That is a fact. But that is a fact too. But I was living my whole life thinking that would be the thing that makes me truly happy. And you know what? On the day that the marks came out for HSC, and I found out what marks I got, I actually cried. I cried tears of sadness and disappointment. I know. I realized I wouldn't get to go to that uni. That wouldn't happen. My dreams wouldn't come true. And it took me 2 years to realize I was so stupid. I was building my whole life around that this would complete me. I would place all my hopes for happiness in my achievements, how impressive that would sound next to my name, not realizing that Jesus was the only person who would complete me. He would be the one who makes me perfect, knowing God in a face-to-face way that would satisfy my soul. I was designed to enjoy God forever. You were designed to enjoy Him forever. And that is the highest feeling we can experience, the joy of having the Son of God living inside us. All the other forms of joy and happiness we can experience in the world, they're good, but they're temporary, and they don't even compare with how joyful we can be when we know God. Now, I also cried a few weeks ago. I don't just cry a lot anyway, but just putting it out there. But I cried a few weeks ago for something very different at the launch. Elijah, who's in year 12, very humbly shared on his Facebook how he had been experiencing a conflict with Brandon, who was our old youth pastor for many years. And Elijah shared that, with me just the day before that he wasn't going to talk with Brandon. He wouldn't try and apologize. But on the night of the bonfire at youth, something about bonfires as well, and singing songs around the campfire, but something happened that night. God's Spirit worked in Elijah and moved him. He went up to Brandon afterwards and said, "Brandon, I need to ask for forgiveness. I want to make things right again." And afterwards, we took a photo together, the three of us, Brandon, Elijah, and myself. And you can really see, this is probably really late at night, but you can often see the joy in our eyes. We're tired, we're exhausted, we've got red eyes, but that is an overflow of the excitement we felt because we had seen how God had worked in that relationship. God's Spirit had been working over time to bring him to peace, but also brought us so much joy. We were just seeing that with our own eyes, how kind God was to us. Now, if you don't follow Jesus, if you haven't accepted him into your life, I have one thing to say. Honestly, you're missing out. You're missing out on this same kind of joy. Life may suck. You may experience divorce or a breakdown in a relationship. You may experience depression. You may see a loved one suffer. You yourself may suffer. You may experience rejection, lose money, get bullied, feel alone in life. But as long as Jesus is loved by his dad, that promise is just as true for you. He will fill your joy. You can experience a joy which will never change, even though life may go up and down, up and down. So my call to you tonight is this. Stop trying to find your purpose in life and what it can offer. Behind every one of the good things, money, traveling overseas, technology, fame, food, sex, God is the creator of all those things. He is the source of joy, and he wants to offer you the greatest gift you could receive. He wants to tell you, I've got something better for you. Be loved by me. Now, even if you don't feel like you're experiencing much joy, why don't you even just start tonight in a really simple way? Why don't you just say, God, would you just help me to enjoy you? God's Spirit, would you please just help give me more joy in life? Now, God's Spirit enables us to have joy. It may be slow, but he will produce that in you. I want to quickly share 3 joy killers and 3 joy givers as we wrap up. Often we think about, killjoys or KJs. I want to show you 3 joy killers first, things that steal our joy. The first one is comparison or comparing ourselves. You guys live in a generation where we're so constantly exposed to other people, whether it be on social media, on Instagram. We're just constantly exposed to what everyone else is doing, and that can make us feel like we're missing out. You might have one day put a photo up online or shared something, and then a few minutes later you refresh only to see that someone else has got something that looks more impressive than yours, and then all of a sudden you just have lost all your enjoyment of that thing you had in the first place. That's the age we're living in, and we need to be aware of this and how easily our joy can be stolen. We need to be content in the joy we are given. The second thing is isolation. Being alone and away from people can really steal our joy. When we're away from people who aren't reminding us of truth and aren't pointing us back to God, that can really affect our ability to enjoy life and enjoy the life that God gave us. And the third one is avoiding God. It makes sense, doesn't it? If God is the source of joy and we avoid him, we're missing out on a lot of it, aren't we? I want to share 3 joy givers, though, things that are really going to enrich us, I think. The first one is godly friends who will encourage you. Now, a lot of you guys have this already, but I'm not talking about times when you just hang out and go to the shops or play sport or make movies together. I'm talking about something bigger than that. I'm talking about people who will point you to the love of God when things are hard, people who will listen to you, people who will remind you of what is true for you in the Bible. Make sure you yourself are that kind of person and you're surrounding yourself with people who are going to point you towards Jesus. The second joy giver is time with God himself. It makes sense. If you want to enjoy a relationship with someone, you've got to spend time with them, right? And that's no different with God himself. And the third one is obeying God, following him. When we follow God, we experience a level of joy because we know this is what we were made for. We experience the effects of it as well. So that's what we were made for. So as we consider what it's like to pursue joy, to follow God in all our lives, just remember your purpose in life is to enjoy God forever. How about I pray? Father God, we just thank you so much that you have given us Jesus. We thank you for your plan before the beginning of time. Thank you that you've so loved Jesus, and in so loving Jesus, he's loved us in the same way. And Holy Spirit, we just pray that you would help us to not just view you as this idea or this concept or this thing we read, but we would view you as our dad, that we would come close to you and you would help us to show joy to people in our life, and that it would point all the way back to you, Jesus. We pray this in his name. Amen.